Всем привет.
Good afternoon, dear ladies and gentlemen, and this is going to be top session regarding the taxation of private investors, and the discussion is going to be devoted to how the private investors fight for their rights. And currently, in accordance to the tax code, unfortunately, should you, in the beginning of the year, have the amount of money, and by the end of the year you have, half of that. However, you would have, profit-generating transactions. You got to pay the tax, subject to the tax code. Then we actually attended the meeting of the working group under the government, and I'm an optimist, and hopefully, we have passed this. Problem, and Ernst& Young have been dealing with this issue for 5 years, right, Vladimir? And please tell us what has changed and where we've been striving for, and when we will be able actually to receive not a justified, but it has to be justified taxation. So please. Yes, indeed, Andrei. Thank you so much. This is a very painful topic. I don't know whether it is, a good sign or not that I've been dealing with the issue for 5 years. Well, indeed, not for 5, but for 4 years, and we still have time. But briefly, let me tell you why am I dealing with this. I'm Vladimir Pfisenko. I'm partner of Ernst& Young. I'm 19. This is my 19th years in dealing with private clients. This is my third country. I've been working in Kazakhstan for 7 years. I used to be working in Russia and U.S. I have CPA degree, and I know a bit, about taxation of private entities in different countries, and I've been dealing with the issue because of my job. And long ago, when I came to Kazakhstan, I got astonished by the fact that the taxes levied on investment income are payable. Actually, I have clients who would follow taxation, and they would pay more than they would make, right? And economically, this is not going to be the case. And I proposed amendments to be made to the tax code, and in this regard, actually, it seemed to me always that my mission is not to, avoid paying taxes to the budget, but, you gotta pay from a net financial result. So actually, we've discussed the issue very actively with the parliamentary deputies, with the governmental members, and so on. So hopefully, we are to cross the finish line soon. And just recently, we talked to Vice Minister of Finance, Yerzhan Yurikovich, regarding the issue. We've discussed the issue with the State Revenue Committee, and the thesis is very, very simple. We identified 3 complexities of the tax code of Kazakhstan regarding the passive income. So number 1 is the fact that we're not able to oppose 2 transactions. So you bought and sold Microsoft, and you bought and sold IBM with loss, and you got to pay, for the positive transaction. We defend the position of having it all put in together into the balance, as it is in other countries. And we also would like to refer the losses for certain periods of time, as it works in other countries. And in a tax code, it is written and fixed in 2 articles that somehow cover the passive income. And in Article 3-2, it is written that should the income not be mentioned, and if it is not due, then the gross amount is to be levied. And a very bright example could be made. from the recent practice. And should you purchase Bitcoin for $60,000 and then you would sell it for $20,000, you know, the tax is going to be $2,000, even though the losses is $40,000. So the objective is to understand that the legislation is going to be absolutely reflecting the technology, and we've been witnessing how fast the technologies are being developed, and we thought that the principle of taxation has to be incorporated, related to the net financial result. We have the provision saying that should the profit be generated from the taxable source, then the gross amount is to be taxable. So we have lots of companies that have been registered in offshore jurisdictions, and the legal entity may not find out about it. But formally, we have the issue, as it is in Bitcoin's case, of how to pay. So we simply pay for the amount of sale. And the next issue is how to keep the bookkeeping, how to proceed with the bookkeeping on the tax. And in the tax code, it is said that in order to have the foreign tax on passive income, we have to provide the document issued or registered by the tax authority of the other country. As you can imagine, if you actively operate, then that's an unreal, totally unreal, because it's hard to get such a document, or it's so expensive to get a document. So the amendments have to be made in order for us to use, the broker's report instead. And we proposed the amendments, and we got together. There were 20, 30 people, and we discussed the issue very thoroughly, and we were very happy when our colleagues from the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Economy, and the State Revenue Committee said that yes, the issue was clear and it needed to be sorted out, and we split it, those potential amendments, into two parts, and we decided to do the following. So a part of those amendments were so hot to be introduced starting from January of 2023 in current years of trading, and part of the amendments may be postponed and to be incorporated into the new tax code. So the amendments that we decided to make starting from January of 2023 is putting the balance in losses and gains, and that would be the derivative financial instrument, and having the losses registered within the given timely periods. And the rest of the amendments was decided to be incorporated with under the future tax code. Thank you so much. I think it makes sense to ask our distinguished guest, Arman Alexandrovich, State Revenue Committee. So when is there going to be a chance for us to see the light in the end of the tunnel? Thank you, Andrei. I'm very pleased to be invited to this gathering. My name is Tiana Arman. I'm the Director of Department of Physical Entities Taxation under the State Revenue Committee. As it was said rightfully by Vladimir, there are certain nuances and differences in terms of how to define the income for legal entities and physical entities. And in physical entities, we would, in a legal entities case, we would have a very firm structure, whereas it's missing. And for the physical entities, if you have 5 transactions and 5 of them were win-win position and the rest would be associated with losses, you would still need to pay as opposed to your winning positions. And as Vladimir has described, his very hard way forward, he has spent 4 years dealing with the issue. Well, indeed, we have held a series of meetings. We had large extended meetings and private discussions as well, and we did realize the problem from within. Yes, indeed, the issue exists, and we did not make any veto of saying justify taxation.
And by the way, your notes are to the comparison table. You are talking about just taxation. Yes, we used this definition. There is a specific progress at the level of state bodies. We gathered in the Ministry of Finances and National Economy, regulation of financial market body, and that is why we need to move in this direction, and we need to give the opportunities to cover losses by the revenue. As for expanded option with the new financial instruments, we have learned them, and actually they are not discussed in the code. We have a working group which works on a new tax code, which will be launched, put into force from 2025, and all these moments will be taken into consideration there. As for digital assets, cryptocurrency, for example, so we were working on them last year. And now the tax code has got specific amendments which eliminated the issues with the full values of revenue. In digital assets, we pay only for the revenue. And have introduced these amendments, for example, inside of the Republic or abroad. And as for these amendments, yes, we have some agreements. We have comparison tables. And you know that the establishment of the legislation is a very complicated process. And that is why we discuss it in the parliament, and it will be approved further. And only after that, when it's in the Senate, only after that we can discuss it somehow that yes, indeed, we have specific amendments, they exist, and they will work. And I can state that the opinion of business society, we have heard them. We made specific steps, and we will continue this activity. Okay, when it will go to the Senate of the Parliament, in order not to tell you that actually you told us that it will be in September or July, just note, and I will list this month. This activity is regulated, and if the draft law is introduced, it will be till the end of the year. Okay? Okay. I would like to ask a question, Sergey. Lukiana from Freedom Finance. What about your idea to assign your brokers as taxpayers? Hello, my name is Sergey Lukianov. I represent Freedom Finance Global. We have brokers companies in two jurisdictions, Freedom Finance and Freedom Global. In AFC, we have about 200,000 clients in our clients base, and all these clients, they fill and ask different questions about taxation when we will have the same situation like in the whole world when workers will become tax agents. And in autumn, for example, we will fill in the declaration and pay our taxes. How many people apply declarations? I'm not sure. Probably you will guess. What do you think? How many people? What do you think? In Kazakhstan, how many brokers' accounts in Kazakhstan? 1 million. Okay, who else? Okay, 1,200,000. It's a huge number for the population, 19 million people. What do you think? So how many declarations with the indication of revenue on securities were applied? 20 times? 100,000? You are so optimistic. 1,673 declarations. Yes, our citizens do not consider themselves as taxpayers. Like, you say, I'm sorry, it's not my role, but I just want to defend the citizens, taxpayers. Okay, out of 1,200,000, not all violators, they're just holders who bought shares. They do not sell them. That is why you need to speak about not the number of holders, but active traders who deal with it. Okay, we will not go into details, but indeed, there are some reforms in the country. There is an order from the president to rewrite the code. It's not a simple document. It's a very complicated document, and up to 2025, there should be a new document. It's a overall declaration, progressive scale of taxes, VAT, and so on. I think I'm so sorry for my colleagues because they work so hard and they will be eaten up by all the citizens. I'm not jealous about your work. And that is why morally we want to help you and to have just system, comfortable, convenient for our citizens not to have any problems with filling in declaration and payment taxes and so on. And international practices shows that it's possible. So you can become a tax agent when broker will, for example, apply the reference declaration. It's possible when the system is transparent and easy. Otherwise, as a rule, when you submit your declaration, if, for example, it's a citizen, he's responsible, and if it's a professional agent, the agent is responsible. And top management of all brokers, they can be sentenced, and the systems are different, and different inspectors read tax code differently. So anyway, we will be imprisoned, and there is no any consensus in the society. When I started studying the system, we met with the partners, with Big Four, and someone from this audience, I will not say who, he told me, I'm a partner and I'm filling in the declaration. And I told them that actually I cannot fill in this declaration by these rules and another part by different rules. And these issues can be different, but the standards are the same. And every time we try sometimes to agree or just to sue, but it's a firm which is specialized on the taxes, on the estimations and presentation of the interests. So we're not specialized in taxes. We have different business actually. And the practice shows that in order to become a tax agent, first of all, we need a simple system. First of all, and ideally, there should be, for example, a module in 1C which is certified by a tax body, and then we will know that the estimation of the taxes will be just, probably not just but correct, and we will work more than 1 year. So, like people say, if you steal, you drink, and you go to the prison. That is why we need to help our citizens to estimate own taxes. And actually, we have to probably make a special form in the system how to calculate own taxes in order to connect securities in one block with specific recommendations and values. For example, what kind of boxes to fill in it, just simple calculations for the whole year. It's the only step which we may take, and in order not to make our clients suffer. One of the problems of our clients, investors, is that tax bodies understood. Actually, our bodies understood that we had investors, and they tried to block accounts of the citizens who didn't submit declarations, even though you trade in the stock exchange. We have a unique tax benefit which exists in Kazakhstan. Only when you sell security in the stock exchange openly, if one stock exchange, KASE, or if it's listed in another stock exchange, X, then in this case, selling the securities means that it doesn't increase your income tax. It's a unique benefit. Sequesters of benefits when it's considered every year. In the tax, every year the bodies ask whether we need to keep it. And every year, thank you, the industry and all the participants, we actually make them sure that the stock market needs it, and the tax body hear us, and we keep this benefit. Thus, there is an increase in the client base. And here, it's not just the benefit, but the need to apply the declaration. And people just forget about it. They do not think about it. They do not remember about it. And that is why they made the consequences, especially when different accounts are blocked and you need to fill in the empty declaration. And it's one of the important moments. We do not have a culture of submitting a declaration. So, for example, why do I need to submit declaration? It's just the statistical form. Why do I need it? People do not think about it. It's just like a parking land. When you drive your car, if you parked, if you, for example, used your parking lot, if you pay, and you understand that actually I took actually this place and need to pay. And it's just, but if you passing by, and if they just accept money from you, and you need to fill in a specific paper and to send it, it causes misunderstandings among our population why they need it, and it will be fixed over some time because over arching declaration is coming, and different controls which are introduced compliance, and then it's harder and harder to come to the bank, to the financial company, and just to open bank account and to show the source of money. It's a culture. This culture will appear not now, probably in 3 years or 5 years. And I will hope that we will win and get these amendments in the code, and brokers will be able to become tax agents and to make life easier when you just press one button and submit your declaration and make transactions from your broker account. So the future world will be great. We will be waiting for it. Okay. I just want to add that up to recent time, and thank our bodies, this declaration had only 4 lines for securities. If you had more than 4 securities, you had to fill in all the lines. If you're a trader, you can imagine, as far as I understand, there are 8 or 16 lines, but it's easier, yes. Actually, the number of fields do not solve it, but we are thankful to Arman because it's a person from tax bodies who understands the problems of the sector. It's not a joke. Even though, no participants were checked before, and that is why there are small precedents. At last, we have some specialists who understand our problems, and they try to solve our problems. It's clear because for them it's a challenge to collect taxes. If the system is complicated, it's very hard to administrate it. Understand that colleagues care about themselves, but it's very hard work. Thank you very much, Herman. I just wanted to ask the question to Danyar Timirbayev from Association of Minor Investors. Let us imagine that the bright future has come. What are the other problems among our investors? So, if to speak about our pain of private investors, you know that even one platform, Astana Finance Days, is not enough. It won't be days, it will be years. It's a joke. I would like to thank Arman Tan. I think it's evening of it's a thank you evening because he is a representative who wants to understand stock exchange, and he succeeded. Starting from 2019, we have been discussing these amendments, and thus the first light we saw in 2020 when the tax body told us that they could consider it, or we could consider it. And Vladimir will prove we just want to achieve the final line. In the first meeting when we met with them, I heard when the stock transactions always showed some cases with freight transportation taxation, and I understood that we shouldn't speak about, for example, high frequency trade intraday, robots, and so on, when the market is developing so fast that we estimate not just seconds but milliseconds, and our investors' transactions can happen, for example, for thousands times per day. If taxation tax body want to check them, they need to check thousands transactions. Thank you, Arman, for understanding our peculiarities. I understand. I hope that at last we will achieve it. The most important thing is not the deadline of the legislation, but if it puts into force, if we accept these amendments, they will put into force starting from the 1st January next year, and they will have retrospective, they will be disseminated to different transactions, and we hope so that those transactions which were up to 2024, I would suggest the tax body to take the period from 2020 when the world was locked and many physical bodies all around the world, they just went to the stock exchange via their applications, and they understood that actually they could not only play Counter-Strike or Call of Duty, especially young people, but they can trade sometimes buy securities.
So therefore, I'd like to thank you, and special thanks to the State Revenue Committee for providing us a hope to the market. And the major thing is not to have people lose their hope in you. So we've also been discussing the amnesty, by the way, and we did not come to a consensus on the issue yet. And this is one of the key factors that we have paid our utmost attention to have an amnesty and have the amnesty validated not only from the date of adoption of the law, but also that it could be a very good solution for many issues, and we could have legalized monetary assets and the physical assets that investors would have, so that they could pay taxes, legally. So again, to have a retrospective for a couple of years, that would be a good decision. So the tax code might be amended year to year, and this could be a very doable option. So as far as I'm concerned, the Kazakhstanis did not have that in practice before. So if it didn't take place in the past, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So we did have the amnesty. We used to be having the legalization of illegal immovable property, and that was repeatedly done. There were not a single time when people would have, repeated amnesty. And those who are here today, do remember that we had 3 legalization of immovable property. Now, it's hard to say about the amendments. Well, yeah, please lock the door. Yes, and we cannot say that, yes, this is something that we will impose, retrospectively. But indeed, this is not going to be an amnesty, but changing the conditions for taxation. And those people who would not pay those taxes would have, an opportunity to start with, scratch. And actually, that's a bad practice of having the norms retrospectively. And we gotta understand that some people actually have paid the taxes already, and undoubtedly we might have some shadow transactions, but it's fair to say that we keep developing, and starting from last year, we received information in terms of automated exchange of information, and we have information regarding the legal entities of Kazakhstan working in foreign jurisdictions. And in this regard, I think that from year to year we will have a need to make those amendments, even though if we could change and revise the position, we would still strive for more transparency. Why? is that there is a need for that, and they would not, you know, not for the fact that they would not pay for it, but they would assume that that's beyond our control and ability to keep a track on. However, within the framework of at least 2023, I think that we could look at the issue, and the declaration handover is just due for 2023 for legal entities, so there's no harm for the legal entities. Again, this is going to be discussed later. And everybody understands that 2022 was not that, rainbow-like and super positive, and it would be just to move forward towards the market actors and help those who ended up in crisis. I wanted to say that 2022 was a happy year. So, I purchased airlines, Southwest, and so on, whatever it was possible. I actually tired to sell, but from November of 2021, the bear has come, and to the market. So November of 2021, I just mentioned about 2025. So I'm dreaming about declaration of fall. So it's so important for the investors. They fixed having losses for the last 18 months. So the losses is something that they have to be dealing with, and they will have to pay from the positive operations. So the natural question is coming up. Why do we have to pay? Tell the tax authority that we're not going to be declaring our income. Why is that? They have to take their time and think about it. The tax authority said that they will find out anyway, because there's an automated exchange of information and so on. I wanted to add that there's a lack of understanding of the potential issue, actually. The matter is that automated exchange of data is something that we have for 2 years in a row by this time. And I wouldn't support your thesis in terms of people would not declare because in majority of cases they were hoping that nobody's going to find out. Many people are not aware about the need to declare, actually. Let's be honest. But if we have a broker's account for 1.2 million and a declaration was for 1.7 million, we have to realize that within the framework of 2 years, there's the third year is coming, we will have tens of thousands and maybe hundreds of thousands of citizens, and those citizens will be subject, to be, payable, to be ought to pay the taxes. And again, there's a conflict of the current regulations and the previous regulations. So it's hard for me to imagine what mood we might have eventually within the society. We have to adhere to some policy, and eventually what consequences we might be dealing with, even though if it is 100,000 people or 200,000 people or 3,000 people, 300,000 people, and then, if we multiply that to the interest rate, then it will be very painful for the entire society. And as it was said by Sergei, actually, the standard practice while introducing these mechanisms is to have an amnesty or a sort of a similar measure when you would, yes, demonstrate the income and the budget is going to be getting the information, and there's going to be a completely different level of trust between the authority, the state, and the citizens. And I remember us having the debates, and last time you made a very reasonable reasoning, saying that 300,000 people would apply for a refund, for tax refund. I mean, but let's vote and raise the hands and see how the things are going to be developing. So the budget is going to be getting access billions or trillions of tenge. Raise those who think that the amnesty is going to be bringing the money to the budget. You see, some of you were ashamed. Actually, I would ask us to think thoroughly from different standpoints. A, we might look at it as from the budgetary standpoint, it's either plus or minus. The amnesty is going to bring much more than we would expect. And secondly, in accordance with the statistics, we have lots of citizens working in a shadow. We might argue why they're in a shadow. Is it because they don't want to be having a legal business? However, I've been dealing with thousands of clients, and 99% would say that we want to be just, and we cannot do that because we can't just give out whatever we make at 100% effective interest rate. So again, when 100,000 people get the reports on automated exchange of data, we would allow them not to be in trouble. We have some questions from the audience. Let's ask. Good afternoon, senior lawyer of Michael Wilson and Partners. I am the personal subscriber of Andrei's channel. And I found out about this event thanks to your ad on your channel. So my question is very practical, actually, very interesting and lively discussion. The channel is open for private investors who would receive notifications from district tax authorities saying that within the framework of exchange of information, the state revenue representative told us about this. That the notification could say that the applicant would have transactions in Europe, and the tax was levied by the agents, the bank where the client is trading, and the country is a participant of avoiding dual taxation with Kazakhstan. So while approaching the tax authority, they demanded, again, following the procedure, then the notary public registered justification saying that yes, indeed, the tax was paid. But the practical issue was that the tax agent was represented by the bank. So for a private investor, it's so hard, to address the bank that had to actually, for each and every transaction for 2021, to provide the inquiry from the tax authority and provide this confirmation via postal delivery. So perhaps that was a subject of discussions by the working group. So we have to work on that as well, because this mechanism actually is something that creates lots of questions, and at the same time, the private investor said that it's easier for me, to have dual taxation, taking into account that he has been levied the tax already elsewhere abroad, So again, this is very, very hot topic. Thank you so much for your question. Well, Vladimir, in the very beginning of the meeting, actually told about this. Yes, as one of 6 problems that he has voiced. So the first issue is to confirm the question. And currently, we are not ready to look at alternative options. We don't see how we could ensure the authenticity of payment of that tax. And as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to securities, there are not many countries with having the tax levied at the source of payment. So it's not going to be such a huge layer of problems. However, we have to take that into account under the new code. And we have to realize of how, we could receive that document and how we could interpret it otherwise. Because we do understand that that's fine. When we deal with some business transactions, it's one thing, you deal with one constant partner, and, the amounts are totally different, and it's easy, actually, to receive those documents. However, once we have a broker through internet, in fact, we would not meet the person and we would never visit the country. Yes, indeed. From a practical standpoint, the issues arise and related to the fact how you could get that inquiry. Do you have to travel there, or you have to send a power of attorney to somewhere, and so on? Of course, those issues exist, and we've discussed them. However, so far, we don't have a solution, or even there's no vision regarding how this could be replaced. Yes, and I would totally agree with you. There's an issue. And we have to take into account that the tax and the payment of tax elsewhere in a foreign jurisdiction is not, going to be not levied on you, So the tax elsewhere could be just 1%. So, that has to be taken into account. And here the tax interest could be like 10%, and the difference has to be paid. I just wanted to clarify. I think that this is the issue of tax administration, which is more important than the tax code. Because last year we had tax nightmare, We were, promoting that brand. Why? Because we had so many addresses from the investors. And, for instance, you have a transaction to your dollars account over a certain limit, and then you receive a notification that you have to pay up 10%, even though if you inherited from your granny something, right? And if you receive something to your dollar account, you have to pay 10%, because they have to, and, find testimonies from the White House, with the apostle and Republican and Democratic parties, so for them to, confirm. It depends on what tax authority you deal with and what officer you dealt with, whether he is kind or not kind. I cannot deviate from that. In the beginning, we thanked our partners, but Arman, you have to feel the pain of investors, because we get lots of addresses from the private investors, because tax offices don't understand. They say, those entities deal with speculation, but in fact, tax administration may be easier. It may be simplified should the tax authority follow the global practice. As if everything was stolen before us. And so you act like QI or IRS agents, Freedom Finance, had the QI status is for 3 years. The IRS audit is going to be conducted. Halik received the same status this year, and we know that the Central Depository to have this status, and as if this is going to be the paper to be provided by the U.S. authority, but they need the document to be verified by IRS, and this is very hard to do. And what I'd like to say that death and taxes are inevitable. So it's timing. Thank you so much. I would like to wish us to have a bright future and have more taxable amounts for the tax authorities of Kazakhstan. And hopefully the taxes will grow. Thank you so much.